Kyle Neddenriep from Indy Star joining us now. Kyle, how are you, sir?
Hey, doing good, Jim. How are you?
Just peachy, man. It's the worst time of the year, although it's a great time of year. Spring, everything's not, about to pop and grow and be able to get outside, but the end of college basketball is here, even high school basketball, which for you, I know, is probably a welcome reprieve as hard as you work covering so much. But boy, it's almost depressing to think about that. But what a great finale for Indiana high school basketball this past Saturday night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Yeah, so sorry, it's sort of cutting out a little bit, but yeah, it was a great night. The Saturday night at Gamebridge was a fantastic atmosphere, and just couldn't have. I told a couple people it felt like a Friday night at a packed house in a gym somewhere that was a lot smaller. The atmosphere was incredible. I don't know if I've felt anything quite like that in an NBA arena. It's just ridiculous that it could feel like that. So yeah, it was fantastic atmosphere. The game, was kind of heading towards looked like a potential upset there going into the fourth quarter, but Kokomo just didn't quite have enough offensively around Flory to kind of help him out. That's been their issue at times this year. Kind of showed up again on Saturday night, and and Ben Davis obviously has a lot to do with that. Nobody beat them all year for a reason, and they're just too good defensively, I think, for a lot of people to handle that pressure for four quarters. And that kind of turned up to be the case again. And I thought Zane Dowdy was, again, just very, very good. He didn't have his monster rebound numbers like he normally does. There wasn't a ton of them to get, really. But he had 20 points and kind of negated Flory to an extent on the interior. And just another really good game for him as well. So, overall, just it was a fun game, not a big surprise, that Ben Davis finished it off, but credit to them. 33 wins and no losses is impressive. The zero is the impressive. It doesn't matter how many you win, but the zero is just for the schedule they play. It's amazing.
That was exactly what I was getting ready to talk about. Is, man, they play all comers. Are they in the MIC?
Yeah, they
are in the interclass. So There you go. That's one of, if not the toughest conference in the state. They're an Indianapolis school, so they're playing everybody that's anybody during the season. And this, of course, the tournament is the equalizer. You can't escape anybody at that point, and yet they took them all on, and that's historic. I mean, is it 13 teams that have done that?
Yeah, it was 13 prior to Saturday. So yeah, now 14 teams over 100 and whatever, 111 or something like that, 112, 13 years. So, yeah, it doesn't happen that often. The last one was relatively recent with the Warren Central 2018 team went 32-0. And then before that, the 09 Bloomington South and Princeton teams both did it that year, back-to-back in that night session. I remember that. That was memorable night. Princeton barely beat Rochester that night. And I think it was double overtime. And but yeah, it just hasn't been done a lot. And that's a credit to playing a really tough schedule. And in Ben Davis's case, just really doing it on the defensive end, night in and night out. And they've got obviously some good offensive players too. They got a veteran team. They have kind of everything. There's everything you really need to win a championship.
What was it about this Ben Davis team, and who do you compare them to as far as the greats? We think back, of course, Lyndon Jones, Jay Edwards, Conley, and Oden. Those were great duos on those teams that just destroyed people. But where does this Ben Davis team fit?
I would say they are, they're probably. It's hard to say. I mean, they're not a star power team necessarily. They're not like they have the McDonald's All-American type. They don't have the guy who's going to go out and score 30 points, which I think it makes it even maybe more impressive. That was kind of similar to Warren Central team 5 years ago, they had David Bell, they had Jesse Bingham, who's a great player at UIndy Division II, and also Jacoby Robinson's there too. And they have Antoine Cushenberry and Dean Tate, who both played at a smaller level in college. But you look at this Ben Davis team, you have guys who are probably going to play at a little bit higher level in basketball. Warren had David Bell, who's in the NFL, but this team probably has Zane Dowdy's going to get possibly. I know Ball State's coming in on him tonight to visit with the family, but it's and Sheridan Sharp's going to go play at Nicholls State, which is D1. So you have some really good players as far as that goes, but it's not a team that's just going to overwhelm you with scoring explosion. I think Mark Zachary's probably the kid that maybe people don't realize is that good. Who he's only a sophomore, so he's going to be a really good player at the next level. It could be in football though. So sorry, I'm a little distracted here. I'm trying to get my badge situation figured out for work, but yeah, it's going to be, it's a team that I think that will go down in history. Kind of the sum of its pieces are maybe greater than the individual parts. So I think that's maybe the biggest thing to remember about this team.
Former Indiana sharpshooter Matt Roth took over coach of Blackhawk Christian after the unfortunate passing of their coach a year or so ago, and was able to get them back to the state championship game and went and won it.
Yeah, Matt did a great job. Pretty emotional time, I think, for him. And, coming in for Coach Davidson, Mark Davidson, who passed away last year, and Matt had worked under him previously as an assistant, for, I think it was 2015 to 2018 or 13 to 16, somewhere in that range. But he knew some of these kids on the team at a younger age, including Jimmy Davidson, Mark's son, who used to ride with him on the bus and steal his iPad and play PGA golf on Matt's iPad. And, I talked to Jimmy last week about that. And, he was hoping Matt would get the job. He got back into coaching. He was out of high school coaching for a little while and then got back into it. And then, it kind of became a opportunity for him to come back to Blackhawk right before Mark passed away, which was last May. And, Mark had cancer and, just an amazing dude. I got to know him a little bit over the last few years, and just a guy who, I told Jimmy too that, you'd walk away from talking to Mark and it was like you felt better about yourself. He's one of those type of guys, knowing what he was going through and how he handled it. But, a really cool moment at the end of that. Jimmy Davidson kind of flips the ball up ahead to Josh First to end the game. And, the immediate reaction for Jimmy was to go over and give Matt Roth a huge hug. And that's a memory I'll always think of, with that Blackhawk Christian team. And, the fact that they beat a very good Linton Stockton team, they had to come from behind and do it. And, those two 2A teams are both, they would both do really well in the 4A tournament. They're both excellent basketball teams. So, that was a great game, great battle. And, I think, credit to Matt for coming in and filling some huge shoes with Mark Davidson, who's, and Matt very, he said, hey, this will always be his program. His fingerprints will always be on this program. But Matt stepped up and did a fantastic job, in a tough spot and was able to kind of reap the rewards in the championship game. And, has a really good team. They'll be good again next year, I think, with Kellen Pickett coming back, who's about 6'8" sophomore, and he played excellent that night. So I don't think that program will necessarily drop off very far.
I mentioned Flory Bidunga earlier in Kokomo's attempt to hand Ben Davis their only loss, not successful, but it was certainly a challenge. But Flory Bidunga had a huge audience there with the entire Indiana basketball staff, led by Mike Woodson, of course, John Calipari from Kentucky, Tom Izzo from Michigan State, Bruce Pearl from Auburn, Juwan Howard from Michigan, amongst others there to watch him, and he did not disappoint. where is he as far as level of being recruited? You know, he's number 2 on the rivals board right now, but how far back do we have to go as far as level of recruit that's being chased?
Oh boy.
Eric
Gosh.
Gordon? I mean, or has it been more, but was Conley in between that? I can't remember.
No, Conley was right before that, but I mean, there's been, I don't, Gary Harris was pretty highly, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was quite to that level, maybe, but hard to know. I'm sure there's been, it's hard to know. I mean, he's top 5 in the country. I mean, honestly, Xavier Booker had quite a bit, just here in the last year, going to Michigan State. But yeah, I mean, it's up there in that range of the highest of what we've seen in recent years, I would say, and probably more of a, he wasn't a kid obviously anybody knew until even last year. So that's kind of the difference, is there's sort of that who is this guy still, even with him, and just kind of the curiosity factor, which is pretty rare in high school basketball anymore. These kids are so picked over by this age that you kind of feel like you know everything about them at this point. But there's still that curiosity with Flory, and I, even from a human standpoint, getting a chance to talk to him more here in the last few months, than standing behind him after the championship game. And I don't know, Flory, it's hard to know what he actually knows about Indiana high school basketball. He's a great kid, really enjoy talking to him. Everyone likes him, I will say, and he works his butt off, so there's nothing not to like about him. But, to see him standing there, and he was literally just sobbing in tears when, Shane Spear gets the mental attitude award, and then he comes back and he just gives Shane a huge hug. And, he was really distraught, and because that was the end. Shane's a senior, and he basically said, it just means my last chance to play with this class, or these group of guys. So, from that standpoint, he does understand it, and he understands the moment, and it's not a job to him, obviously, and that Kokomo community really loves him. And that, I thought that was cool, to see.
I saw that, and that stood out to me as well. Reading it in your coverage, I'm like, wow, and you did a good job of bringing that across, because that's exactly the take I took from that. I'm like, wow, this means a lot to him. So that's impressive to me that he has absorbed it that quickly, because that's a nuance, and you can't coach that, teach that, whatever. You just have to have that.